Hi, my name's Don Kierden. I'm a person in recovery, and I'm the program coordinator at Turning Point of Windham County.
My name is Cecil McLaury. I am also a person in recovery. I am a recovery coach at Turning Point of Windham County.
What are we going to talk about today, Cecil?
Well, I thought we might talk about pathways to recovery and how someone might get into one and which ones there might be available.
Well, there's a variety of ways to go. It used to be there was 12-step programs, and that was about it. And that's really where my story starts. I was having a conversation with someone one day about my various woes, and that person suggested that maybe the self-medication that I was seeking to manage those woes might be the problem. And the light bulb went on, and off I went. And it was an interesting journey. A year into abstinence and attending those sorts of meetings, I found myself plastered to the bed on an assignment in Ashland, Oregon, and with the worst anxiety I've ever had in my life. And I sought counseling, and I added that to the mix. So I was, talking to a mental health counselor, and then about 4 years into my recovery, I went into some things happened, and I went into the deepest depression of my life, which is good news because I wouldn't have been able to address that underlying issue had I not had the abstinence from my drugs of choice. And from there, the path broadened into a mix of the social aspect of attending those meetings and support from therapists here and there, and eventually, finding other recovery fellowships that address other underlying issues. There's lots of reasons that we seek oblivion, and I wouldn't have had a chance to get at mine. It's like peeling an onion. There's layer after layer after layer, and at the bottom of all that was me, and it's been awesome because I'm more myself than I've ever been in my entire life. And I've actually benefited from having the adversary of addiction to overcome. It's produced a resilience in me that spills over into other aspects of my life. So what was yours like?
Well, my pathway to recovery actually began a long time ago with my mother. My mother was an alcoholic, and alcoholism, drug addiction, and insanity are rife in my family. I learned both the examples of how to escape from who I am and an example of recovery from my mother. The first time I was serious about my recovery, I was actually drug into it by my mother. And while this is not viable for everyone, it worked for me. Sometimes family members can be a great benefit for us. I went along one thing and another and noticed at about 5 or so years in recovery that I was deeply depressed. And I didn't trust mental health at that point. So I continued to be deeply depressed to the point to where somewhere around there I had a suicide attempt that didn't quite get me into a hospital. I have some other medical issues, chronic pain, things like this, and those medical and psychological issues had me moving from one pole to the other. I stayed depressed most of the time, and my most recent suicide attempt was in 2005. I used psychology. I used one of the treatment facilities for depression, and then a counselor who helped to move me along, and my friends in my chosen pathway to recovery helped me as well. One of the things that's been my experience is that no one recovers in a vacuum. I don't care if it's from diabetes, from a cold, or from substance use disorder, we all have people around us to help us recover, whether they're doctors, psychologists, psychiatrists, or other persons in recovery.
Or family members if we're lucky.
Very much so.
And community and co-workers and and on and on and on. There are many pathways to recovery. There are many programs of recovery. There's Refuge Recovery, which is Buddhist-based. There's other faith-based organizations, Celebrate Recovery. There's Smart Recovery, which is a cognitive behavioral approach to recovery. There's All Recovery, which is kind of a mishmash of several approaches that is a little bit more interactive and facilitated by by someone who knows how to do it. And there's a variety of 12-step fellowships. I found myself in a funk 22 years into my recovery and not understanding what the funk was about. Spent some time in a fellowship that focuses on family dysfunction and discovered a world-class case of lifelong PTSD from some childhood trauma. And it's a disease that can remain obscured for upwards of 50 years, and there it was, just like the monster popping out of the closet. But because I'd been abstinent for so long and I had so many assets in place, I was able to address that and get myself through it and move on. And I try to keep an open mind as to what the next modality is going to be that works for me, because my physiology is such that I can never use, I can never ingest alcohol safely ever again in my lifetime. So it's an exercise in having enough going on in my life that, and I don't mean busyness. By going on in my life, I mean having enough connection in this world to other human beings that I don't need to reach for something else. But everybody's recovery is their own.
Very much so. I've noticed that we've talked a lot about issues, psychological and mental issues, depression, PTSD, anxiety, and one might gather the idea that we have a lot of problems. In point of fact, we do, and one of the things that I noticed in my recovery is that rather than die when I was a little kid, I used cough syrup. Rather than run away physically, I ran away mentally. I abused food. I did other things to keep myself from feeling the awful pain that was rife in my household. I knew that something was wrong, but oftentimes when something's wrong, even adults can't figure out what, but they can figure out a solution. And chemistry, chemical drugs, alcohol, things like this are very limited in their usefulness, I should say, because the body gets used to it. The body habituates, the body builds a tolerance, and you have to use more and more. And treatment and then recovery, in my opinion at least, take a lifetime. I have spent my life since age 24 building on my recovery and changing myself and interacting with other people to help me change myself.
So, your pathway to recovery, your loved one's pathway to recovery, it's in our purview, it's a personal thing. And at the Turning Point in Windham County, we have people that are well versed in all of this through their lived experience and through working with others who seek their pathways to recovery. So, we invite you or your loved one or anybody who's just happened to be walking past the television right now, and actually we're not on television, walking past the internet right now, to stop in, give us a call, look us up on the internet, have a visit to our Facebook page. And
thank you for joining us today. We are at 39 Elm Street. You can find us in a variety of different ways. We look forward to seeing you.